This is the Paris Marathon, a 26.2-mile race. It's a great example of what we're going to talk about today. Energy and our body. How our body uses energy and how it gets it. Before we can talk about energy in our body and how it goes in and out, first we have to answer the question, what is energy? Because we hear the term thrown around in general conversation pretty often. We hear things like, Bob has lots of energy, or this battery has a lot of energy in it. And we can get a general idea of what energy is from those terms, but we want a precise scientific definition. So our goal is to define energy. For me at least, it always helps to start with some examples. So let's take the example of a staircase. And there's a bowling ball, a heavy bowling ball on a stair. In order to move that bowling ball up one stair, that takes a certain amount of energy. I'm just going to write an E for energy. Let's look at another example. If we have a car, this is kind of a boxy car, but a car nonetheless. And let's say this car is still. If we want this car to start moving, that also takes energy. So if we look at these examples, now we can think about a definition for energy. So what is energy? Energy is what's needed to make something move. We saw it takes energy to move this bowling ball up a step, and it takes energy to make this car move. Perfect. And so when you move on in physics, you'll build on this definition of energy. But for now, it's a good definition. So energy, what is needed to make something move? And so you can see how this might be applied to our body. But first, before we talk about that, we want to talk about how we measure different amounts of energy, because you can have a lot of energy, you can have a very little amount of energy, and a lot of people will be surprised that the way we measure energy is actually a pretty common household term. It's calorie. It's kind of silly. In our society today, there's a lot of people who are afraid of calories, or there's this idea that calories are a bad thing, but really, all a calorie is it's an amount of energy. And we know that energy is just what's needed to make something move. So now you know, when you see a nutrition fact, this is a nutrition label that you'd find on my favorite box of cereal, which is Frosted Mini Wheats. We see calories with a capital C, and now we know that's just an amount of energy. Nothing more, that's all it means. So 170 calories, that's how much energy is in those Frosted Mini Wheats. So how much energy is in 1 calorie? Well, again, let's look at some examples, because that always helps me. If we were to take 1 calorie, so 1 calorie, notice that I'm writing calorie with an uppercase C. That's important. We'll talk about that in a future video, but for now, just note that we have 1 calorie of energy. And let's take our bowling ball. If we were to transfer that 1 calorie of energy straight to the bowling ball, that bowling ball would be sent 100 feet in the air. That's pretty high. A bowling ball is on average about 10 pounds, at least that's what we use for this calculation. So 1 calorie is a lot of energy. And let's take our example of a car. We already looked at a car over here. So we've got a car. If we were to do the same thing, give that car 1 calorie of energy, cars are a lot heavier, so it wouldn't go as far, but it still goes up 1.5 feet. Now for this calculation, we assume that a car is 2,000 pounds. That's pretty heavy, so that gives us an idea that there's a lot of energy in 1 calorie. So great, now we understand that a calorie is simply an amount of energy, and energy is just what's needed to make something move. So now we can understand how energy moves in and out of our body.